got to finish elders, and then we've got to jump on the deacons. So that is the order for today. All right, let's see here. All right, I didn't have the elder slide that we finished up. Really the last ones that we didn't have on the elders that we didn't cover was, I want to come back to this. He's going to mention twice in regard to the family this idea that verse 4, he must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him. He must do so in a manner worthy of full respect. And then, must have a good reputation with the outsiders, lest he fall into disgrace and to the devil's trap. And so we kind of left off there, kind of came back to that family. He must govern, he must lead, he must guide, he must give direction to his household. Now he's going to get specific with the children, but this is a part of the managing and the leading. And he says that it's to be done there in verse 4. With... I lost my train of thought here. Where am I at now? He must do so in a manner worthy of full respect. Does anybody else have another translation there into verse 4?
Mine says with reverence.
With reverence. Some translations will say with dignity. So how does he manage his household here? He does so with reverence, with respect, with dignity. Why is that important? What are we talking about and what are we not talking about as far as managing something and managing your household? There's a way to do that.
Well, he's not overly harsh.
Yeah. Do it in a way that's honorable, with love, not harsh. I mean, you can manage your affairs, right? You can manage a business, you can manage a store, you can manage a family, but you can do so in a way that is not what? Honorable, with reverence and dignity and respect. You can do it in a way that's, with the fist, with an iron fist, he'll say something similar when he talks about, Vanna, go ahead.
Well, you have to earn respect. And
Yeah.
You can lose it pretty easily. And if you don't treat people right, including your family, you lose that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. And that respect we've talked about, as far as your reputation with the outsiders, I mean, the first place people look at is going to look at your family. How does he treat his wife? How does he treat his children? That's the most personal way that you can test someone's character, right? There's other areas, his work ethic and things of that nature, but absolutely, if he's not giving respect and he's not respectful, he's not worthy of respect as far as people respecting him. And it's kind of, again, similar when he talks about children in a way. He doesn't talk about it here in this passage, but he'll do it in places like Ephesians when he'll say that fathers don't exasperate your children. You can discipline in them such a way that it doesn't produce the results. And same thing, you can manage your household affairs, but it's not just about getting things done, having everything in order. It's about doing it in a way that honors God and is worthy of respect. And you've probably seen people that you've maybe family, friends, maybe coworkers, and you say, they've been successful, they've got a great business, they've got a great career they've had, but I don't respect them as a person. I don't have any, you've seen that where, hey, I got to give it up to this person. They've done a great thing, they've achieved something, but I don't have personal respect for them, how they've done things. And so this is huge. And so I want to stress that here. Now, he's going to mention the specifics of that, I think, with regard to the children, and that's what we came back to, is he's got to see that they obey him. And he must do so in a manner worthy of full respect. Now, certainly this is going to involve, discipline and, we would say with children, punishment, consequences to actions, being consistent. But my experience as a parent and as seeing good parents is the best way is lead by example. You show by your conduct and your words what faithfulness and obedience to God, why it's important. And I think that, instead of seeing this more as, boy, he's got his kids in line, he's kind of, keeping them in line. No, he's parenting in such a way as a Christian father, as a husband, that his children are going to respect him. They're going to obey him. And there's nothing worse. We were at a family gathering a while back, and something was commented about some of the kids. And, we've still got some teenagers, we've got, Camden, and we've got college kids that, bless their hearts, we were all that way. We know everything, when you're 20, 21. Not naming any in particular that I know, but I'm just saying, you might have. And this person was saying in the gathering, my brother had his kids there as well, and later on said, I really appreciate how, the kids were respectful, is basically what they were telling another family, that they were in town. We hadn't been around them in a long time and hadn't seen them in several years and don't see them often and connected with the family. And just a comment was made about the children. Hey, the kids seem to be respectful to their parents. My middle brother, the middle brother, I think they pointed that out, that when he asked his son to do something, who's 17, he did it. I mean, he just did it. And it wasn't a big fight and a big, and again, I think it's that we ask for respect, we conduct ourselves in such a way, and we've done the right things early on, and but I think it's how he leads by example. And so he says that the children, and we talked about that, I think these are kids that are under his rule. These are not adults. They may be adults, but that are still living under their father's rule house. But these are not adult children who've moved on or lived on their own now, and you can't do that with someone that's not under your. And so they are. Titus is going to tell us. So let me give a little bit of. I haven't really peeked over and looked at Titus much. Titus chapter 1 gives the qualifications as well, or qualities for elders. And there's some differences. Titus will say, he's going to mention many of these things that are similar. Faithful to his wife, blameless. But he says that they're children who believe, and the word there is the word we get, faithful. Now, my personal opinion is a man can serve as an elder even if all his children are not baptized, as long as his children are faithful and obedient to him. I do believe that's what Paul has in mind, because he kind of defines what he means by a believer, by being faithful. Again, it's the same word that's used of a steward who's faithful. It's the same Greek word. Context, we're going to get into that in just a second when we talk about the deacons and their wives, or the women, as some translations say. Context always determines usage. Don't ever let someone come to you and say, the Greek word means this, so that's what it means. No, that's not what it means. Just because the dictionary Greek lexicon says that. Usage always determines the word. And I personally think the emphasis here is not on, you got to have baptized believing children. I think he's using the word faithful. They are obedient because to the Father. Because look what he says. Titus says he defines this believer, what a believing child is, a faithful child is. Not open to the charge of being wild and disobedient. I think the specific idea that Paul has in mind is that the children are faithful. They are obedient in that faithfulness to their father, and they are not wild and disobedient. Now, you say, Robert, wouldn't an elder's kid who's going to do that, wouldn't that make sense that they're a Christian? I agree. I agree, and that's how it works 9 times out of 10. But I don't think specifically you can put that upon the qualification that all the kids have to be exactly baptized believers. Now, if the church, again, doesn't want to follow, and that's a question of his leadership, then of course you can't. I don't think a man can serve if people have doubts about his ability and if that's something as a holdup. But I think the context, I'm telling you what I think the context is warranting, that this is the emphasis. And again, you can imagine, why is that important for a leader, for his children to be in that under control? What would that do to his leadership or his reputation or his work? Yeah. Very likely would harm and damage that to a way that, and again, we're not talking about perfection. My kids aren't perfect. My kids have sinned. My kids have done things disobedient. Your kids have done that. We're not talking about that. And we are saying, though, that when a child would be this disobedient and unfaithful to his parents in such a way that his father, who is an elder, it would hurt his ability to lead and his integrity or his word. You know, you're going to another family talking about their child being disobedient, and they're going to say, well, you know what, your kid out last night in the middle of town drinking it up, and it's going to be hard to kind of have those conversations, right? And if your kid's doing it. Yeah, Kathy?
I know when Bill was nominated as elder, it was not a decision he made on his own. The three of us, including Stephanie, talked
Yeah,
about
that's
it a
great.
long time.
Yeah, I like that.
Before he decided that he would do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Roy, do I see a hand over here?
How about children, you believe, just as long as they're faithful?
Yeah, I think that's probably the context, yeah.
Okay, that's when they're home, but how about they're grown, gone? Could you still judge the children, look at them then, or?
Yeah, again, I think the immediate context is while the children are under his authority or being able to manage them, when they leave that home, I don't think that is fair to hold that to an elder and say, his child has done this or his child is not doing right, therefore he's automatically disqualified. Now, it may be the case, his ability to lead a local church has been damaged because of the actions of his child. You know, if an elder's kid goes out here and commits a heinous crime or does something of a nature in such a way, it may be irreparable damage for him to serve as an elder. But I don't believe just because an elder's kid, whether they're outside the home now, that they are not necessarily faithful or done something that disqualifies the elder. I do not believe that's. I believe that the context is while they're under his influence, while they're under his rule. And I even personally think the emphasis on believer, they're faithful to their father. Now, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be a baptized Christian that's going to be able to do that. That's how that works. But anyway, comments, questions on that, or disagree, agree, anything you want to add? This is highly debated. Yes?
If you say if your child did something irreparable to your character or whatever, if
To your reputation.
with your reputation, wouldn't you just watch and see how that elder behaves and handles that? Because that might be a testimony of him being an elder.
Yes.
Because life's going to happen to people.
Yes.
Don't have control. But wouldn't you just like not go, okay, chop his head off because his kid did it?
Absolutely.
Like, I'm going to watch, we're going to see how you do this.
Yes.
And that's what's going to be the testimony for everybody.
Yes. However, there may be occasions and instances where if an elder's son has been, maybe his father has had some business dealings and he's been arrested and accused and found to be embezzling money. If his father's had his hand in that business, there are things that could damage his reputation where the outsiders will say, like father, like son, probably. And so there may be times, but I agree with you, Sochi, that more often than not, this is an opportunity for the elder to show that he is shepherding his child, that this is an opportunity actually to show his quality. We had a situation several years ago with a congregation that I was in, and there was a man put forward, and one of his adult children was not faithful and had some negative statements about the church, and some of this was even online. And we had one person who was just adamant that he was not qualified, therefore. And I remember talking to this gentleman. I guess I was running a little interference with the elders on this. I knew the man. I wanted to talk to him about it because he had brought it up to me. And I said, this man, I named him and his wife have rebuked, they have confronted, they have written letters to their child. They have been trying to shepherd spiritually their child who's gone astray. Doesn't that say something about his quality, his character to be a shepherd? That now he is dealing with a child that is gone off, and he's shepherding him. He's confronting. We're not talking about an elder that's got a kid who's a drunkard and he's just going, what can you do? That's the son, that's Nadab and Abihu. That's some of those, what was the priest, Eli, what would it say that he did not, what, with his sons? Did not restrain his sons. So we're not talking about an elder who's just sitting back going, what can you do? And I tried to point out to this gentleman, I think this potential elder is showing that he is shepherding first his own kid. But again, there may be at times where that is so damaged that he may not be able to serve in a position of leadership. So I agree with you. Comments, questions? This is a big one, believe me, in the church that has been debated.
It's not just a question of his reputation in the church. It's a question of when he's out in the community,
Yes.
he's representing the church. So if he has a bad reputation in the community, even if it's maybe false pretenses,
Yes.
it still reflects badly on the church.
And I want to get Spess here in just a second. I see you back there. There have been a couple occasions when I felt like elders had resigned prematurely, that they shouldn't have. And there's been an occasion, you can probably think of some of them. One, when their spouse dies. Well, I'm not the husband of one wife. No, that's not what that. You've shown your faithfulness to your spouse. This is not a. But anyway, I had one elder, and I just, he came to me asking me what I thought the text was. I told him what the text I thought was saying, and he said, well, I just still feel like I'm not married anymore, and I don't meet the qualification. Another time was when an elder's kid had gone astray, and he felt like now my reputation, I can't stand for the church and never talk to them about. And I was like, no, you shepherd your child, and that will speak volumes of your leadership. And so, this is a big one. Okay, Jeff, Spess.
I was thinking, all these what if, you've got to start with, this isn't, the priority here isn't what that man's right is. It's what's the best thing for the church.
Sure.
If it's not the best thing for the church, he shouldn't want it.
No, that's right.
He's the kind of guy that
Right.
did make a great elder anyway.
Yeah.
And I just think that if you start with that, and if you have that instead of, well, I qualify,
Right.
why
Yeah.
not?
Why am I not an elder? Right. Yeah. Yeah. And even if something has happened in a way that might, like we said, question your ability, it still will the church follow? Is your leadership damaged to the point? And if it's not, then you can keep serving God, even though elders aren't perfect and their situations aren't always perfect. And again, I think sometimes now the church has done better, but we have a not so good past with this when it comes to elders and their kids. And let me tell you another little secret. I'll tell you why a bunch of men don't want to serve as elders in the church, because they've seen how we've treated sometimes elders and their families. Amen? You better shake your head, because I know that's true. We have crucified sometimes. And I'll say this too, another thing. Because I had a family member, or not a family member, I had someone say this kind of back at me one time about my kid. This has been several years ago. Not here and not even in Tulsa. And I said, let me tell you something. The same expectations that are for me and my family are for you. Let me say that again. The same God expectations for me and my children are the same for all of you here this morning. God does not expect me to have a standard where my kids, I've got to do right with my kids, but you don't get to do right by your kids. As I put it back on this member, I said, I've got the same expectation as you have. Now, it may be true to serve as an elder. You have to have a level of maturity and reputation. I understand that. But we've sometimes acted like, well, these elders' families, they got to be under this microscope, and anything they do wrong, they're disqualified, and we're going to judge them. And again, I don't think that's happening as much, and I hope it's not happened here, but it's happened a lot in the church. Comments, questions on that?
The same thing goes that you're talking about. God's expectation for your family was the same as this man.
Right.
God's expectations for us is the same as elders. This
Yeah.
is giving you something that you're supposed to strive to be.
Right. Yep. Yeah. My children need to be faithful and obedient, and yours do too. Now, again, to be an elder, you've got to reach a level of maturity and reputation and example to serve. But again, we've been off to, and I'm telling you, this has killed us in terms of being able to get men who want to serve as elders. Because they're going, number one, I'm not going to be in a glass house where everybody gets to take shots at everything I do and my family. No, thank you. And so they'll make up some reason, and you know what they usually say? Well, I don't have the time, or my job, and I'll look at them, and I'll sometimes go, yeah, that ain't the truth. You tell me why. And sometimes it comes out. Well, that's how the church with elders. Okay, comments, questions? I opened a can. Let's close it real quick. Yes, Linda.
I was just going to say, my dad was an elder twice. And it was when I was in high school. They like crucified me. I mean, I couldn't walk straight enough line.
Yeah.
And those that were so critical of Daddy were whose kids were just horrendous.
Isn't it funny how that works sometimes too? You better believe it's a problem. It's a problem for preachers, elders, and anyone in position of leadership. So, yes, Jeff Pope.
So my dad, when I was about, 12 or so, we were in North Charleston, South Carolina. My dad was an elder, and I remember one Sunday coming home from church, the elders of the church had passed a law that the elders and deacons' kids couldn't mix swim.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The things brethren have come up with, and I'll say this too. Maggie and I have just almost every time we've been tempted or maybe have done it, repented, and we do not tell our kids, you do this because your dad is a preacher. That is a terrible thing to say to it. You do this because your dad is an elder. No, we do this because we're Christians. And I thankfully had some people around me early on that said, you don't put that level of expectation where your kids feel like they got to be one way and the rest of the members' kids can be wild heathens and everybody gets to throw rocks at. And I was thankful for people that encouraged me, don't use that language with your children. And again, that can really set things, because my experience is they're not going to hate their father and their parents. They're going to take it out on the church. And they're going to say, I hate the church because of the way they treated my dad and my family. And so this is big, real big.
And they do feel pressure. I don't remember.
Yeah, there's pressure there.
I don't remember Stephanie ever expressing it so much.
Right.
Jalen has said a time or two, well, my dad's a preacher, Papa's an elder.
Right.
So I know she feels the
No,
pressure.
they're going to feel that. And as parents, we've tried to come alongside them and say, don't feel that pressure. Your pressure is from us to follow Jesus, not do what the church always thinks. And that is huge. And so I'm also telling you that because you may go, well, I'm not an elder. I don't know, Robert, this doesn't apply to me. It applies to all of us to some degree because we talk about judging each other. I'm going to talk about accepting one another in the sermon. And sometimes we live at other people's expectations and standards, and it can do a lot of damage to us. And so, all right, we're going to close the lid on that. I opened that one, but I wanted to open it a little bit because it's been a problem at times. And I hope it's not been a problem here, and I hope it won't be going forward. But you can tell, as your preacher, I'm going to do everything I can that this is not a problem. And in fact, I had someone at another church, they knew what I felt, and they didn't come and ask me. They said, I know what you think, Robert, about that passage. And I said, yeah, I believe exactly that's what the passage is teaching. And let's not teach what we think it means. Let's just teach what it says. And so, all right. Okay. Let me see. The last thing here, 1 Timothy 3. Let's get these elders. Let me see. I want you to notice twice. Well, let's get these last ones here. I'm sorry, the slide, I cut these off from last week. He's not to be a recent convert, and I think that makes sense why we don't understand that. But I want you to see the reason why he says that he may become conceited and fall under the same judgment as the devil. And then he's going to get down and mention the devil again in verse 7. He must also have a good reputation with outsiders so that he will not fall into disgrace and the trap of the devil. So twice he ties in to the devil. What was the deal with the devil? If you remember from my study on angels and demons, remember what my view is of Satan? Is that he was once a what? An angel of God, a powerful, created, probably high-ranking angel. And was he satisfied with that? No. He wanted more. And that pride, right? And so the elders, he says, they don't need to be a new convert, lest they fall into that pride of the devil, and also that they have a good reputation with outsiders, so they don't fall into disgrace and into the devil's trap. What the devil will do with fallen leaders. Let me tell you what happens sometimes. Let me tell you what happens to some of our leaders in the church. When they resign and they leave our little congregation, let me tell you what happens sometimes within a few months, maybe a year or two. They leave the church, is what they do. They don't switch congregations sometimes. Oh, that may look like they did. They're worshiping over at so-and-so now. Sometimes when leaders fall or they are held to such a standard and the pressure, as Kathy said, the shame and disgrace. And what do you think the devil tells them? Whispers in their ear. You are worthless. You blew it. You were an elder and look what you did. You were a deacon, you were a preacher, and look what you did. They will fall into the disgrace and the devil. What's the devil laying? When we fall into sin, what's the devil want us not to do? Get back up on our what? On our feet. He wants us to stay what? Crushed. And sadly, there are brethren who will help keep us down and keep crushing us with that. And elders and leaders sometimes have no choice but to resign and go elsewhere. And I've seen it when they leave, they get out of the church altogether. Tony probably can think of some elders and preachers who never would have thought but have left the faith in the church. Sometimes they fall into sin, sometimes family issues. It's really hard. And so these are real, real serious. So I wanted to end on some serious, strong notes here because this is real, real important. So it mentions the devil twice. I just want you to see that. Very, very interesting. Okay, let's get these deacons here real quick. We're not going to be able to get all this. Someone pick up verse 8, and let's go through verse 13. Someone get 8 through 10, and then who's got 8 through 10? Okay, Kathy, and somebody get 11 through 13. Who's got that? Okay, Valora. Okay, Kathy.
Likewise, deacons must be reverent, not double-tongued, not given to much wine, not greedy for money, holding the mystery of the faith with a pure conscience. But let these also first be tested, then let them serve as deacons, being found blameless.
Women must likewise be dignified, not malicious gossips, but temperate, faithful in all things. Let deacons be husbands of only one wife, and good managers of their children and their own households. For those who have served well as deacons obtain for themselves a high standing and great confidence in the faith that is in Christ Jesus.
Okay, a couple of things here. We probably won't be able to finish this then. But he says, I want you to notice there, in the same what? What's he saying? The qualities, the character, the faith, the standard, if you will, that these elders have. Huh? Are you following me? Let me tell you how we've sometimes approached with deacons. Well, the elders, they got to be spiritual. They got to be strong Christian men. Now, deacons, they don't need to be that spiritual. It's kind of, what? Now, we don't say it, but that's how we act sometimes towards deacons. I've had conversations say, well, he's not the most spiritual, but I think he'll be a good deacon. What? Are you kidding me? Had a conversation with an elder one time. Well, you know, he's not spiritually strong. We're hoping he grows into it. What we've done sometimes is we've had this standard for elders, godly, spiritual, faithful, and then we say, well, yeah, we just need some deacons. And they can kind of be just, you know, they got a pulse if they're willing to. In the same what? Way, the qualities that these elders have should be seen what? In deacons.
In every Christian.
Yeah, right. Every Christian, that's right. But to serve, they need to have this standard, this level of maturity. And so what I'm telling you is oftentimes the bar has been so lowered with deacons that I don't even know if sometimes there's a bar. There have been people that will put forward names, not only deacons, but certainly elders, and you'll look at the name and go, they don't attend church but once a month. They don't ever come to Bible class. This guy's not even married. This guy doesn't have any kids. I mean, you will see people that it's, you know, and again, that's sometimes, again, happens with elders, but I've certainly seen it with deacons that the standard can be so low of expectations. And so anyway, I want you to see that there as we start. We're not going to be able to get into all this. They are to be worthy of respect. Comparison is made specifically to overseer in the qualifications for deacons. They manage. 6 out of the 9 qualities are shared by both. There are a couple of differences. Able to teach is one of them. You've got to play on the wine business, and I don't want to get into the wine discussion, okay? But you've got some issues with that. Elders, does it appear that they're not to drink wine at all? And deacons, it says, are not to have too much wine. So, elders, no, sorry. Deacons, not too much. And so, but there's a subtle difference there, but still, I do think that the elder can have nothing that is charged with him being excessive in and that is addicting of that nature and that would damage his reputation. So maybe there's a subtle difference there. So there are some, and then of course the title, the roles itself, they are not shepherds, they are not elders, but they do have the idea of managing, of overseeing. Deacons that have this work. I do believe, let me get this before we come back to the qualification. I'm sorry, let me get these in here, Roy. Deacons are to serve. We'll come back to that. That's the word that we get there. This is a day-to-day. I believe that Acts 6 is the prototype for deacons, and I don't want to get into that, but I believe it's the prototype. I think that's kind of where you see the skeleton outline kind of drawn. There was a need in the church, and the apostles were being dragged into or having to be distracted from what they needed to be doing, which is ministering the word and prayer. And they said, you need to choose some faithful men who will distribute the food to these widows. And so we get the form of the word, we get deacon in Acts 6. I think it's the prototype that eventually would become the deacons who serve or wait on tables, so to speak. And sometimes we would say maybe take care of some physical needs. And so deacons, not a lot is said about deacons. Philippians 1 and verse 1, Paul gives his greetings to the church at Philippi, to the elders and the deacons. And the word, by the way, there is a noun. You got the verb form of what they do. Now in Philippians 1, you've got the noun form. It's become a role, if you will. It's become an office. And so elders, deacons there. But not much else is said about deacons. And so, okay, Roy, you had a hand. Let you get in here as we close.
Deacons need to be leaders too.
Absolutely.
They have a lot of work to do.
Yep.
They have to want to.
Yep.
Don't put a guy in there because he's your buddy.
No, that's right. Yeah. And so we're going to come back to deacons. We'll finish deacons up next week and talk about their work. And I want to come back to that business. And I want to especially, you look at the language that he gives here. He says, just look at this one phrase. down in verse 9. They must keep hold of the deep truths of the faith with a clear conscience. Now, you tell me that's a low standard. I don't think so. They hold the deep truths with a clear conscience. These are men of conviction and character. And so, anyway, we'll talk about the deacons there, finish that up, and finish up the chapter. All right. We'll close this can of worms I opened.